Welcome back, viewers. You're watching WION World is One. This is World DNA, the show that gets you ahead of the rest. I'm Shivan Chandna.
And I'm Jyotsna Kumar. On the show today, Hamas has called for a swift start to a hostage prisoner exchange with Israel as negotiators from both sides headed to Egypt for crucial talks aimed at ending nearly two-year war in Gaza. The diplomatic push follows Hamas's positive response to Donald Trump's roadmap for the end to the fighting. We'll bring you all the latest updates on that on the show.
Also on World DNA, Ukrainian President Zelensky has slammed allies over the lack of response to Russian strikes after the strikes killed at least 5 people and damaged energy facilities in the Lviv region. Moscow has stepped up attacks, particularly on Ukraine's energy grid and gas production sites. We'll bring you the latest on that front. Let's start with the headlines.
Yeah, very quickly. I think it's going to go very quickly. The meeting seemed to be very good.
U.S. President Donald Trump urges negotiators gathering in Egypt for talks aimed at ending the war in Gaza to move fast, adding that there had been very positive discussions with Hamas and countries from all over the world.
Israel continues its strikes in Gaza, saying there was no ceasefire in place at the moment, only a temporary halt in certain bombings. Gaza health officials say 22 people killed in the territory on Sunday, including 4 aid seekers.
Pentagon says U.S. military has reassigned about 200 federalized members of California National Guard from Los Angeles to Portland, Oregon, a day after a federal judge blocked deployment of Oregon National Guard troops to the city.
French President Emmanuel Macron appoints new government led by Prime Minister Sébastien Lecornu. Jean-Noël Barrot reappointed as Foreign Minister.
Rescue efforts are underway on Mount Everest after a snowstorm trapped nearly 1,000 people in campsites on its eastern side. Hundreds of trekkers were guided to safety by rescuers as unusually heavy precipitation, including rain, pummeled the Himalayas.
In India, authorities say the situation is under control in Odisha's Cuttack city after the violent clashes. 36-hour curfew and internet suspension remains in effect. Police conduct patrol march in the sensitive areas.
"96 patients have died in a massive fire that broke out in an ICU ward of Jaipur Savai Man Singh Hospital in the early hours today.
Trump's 100% tariffs on patented drugs imports is weighing heavily on pharma stocks. Healthcare stocks are underperforming the S&P 500 by the largest margin in history. At the same time, the ongoing AI craze has Nvidia's market cap exceeding that all of big pharma combined.
India continue their dominance over Pakistan in women's cricket with a commanding 88-run win in the ICC ODI World Cup. The match had no shortage of drama, featuring coin toss blunder, a bizarre run-out, and Boggs interrupting the play. The U.S. President Donald Trump has urged everyone involved in efforts to end the Gaza war to move fast.
And this is as mediators are set to meet in Egypt on Monday, of course, today, for indirect peace talks between Hamas and Israel.
Yeah, we're going to very quickly. We had some very good meetings. the countries of the world, a lot of the countries surrounding Israel, frankly, Muslim, Arab, and many others have had great meetings with Hamas, and it looks like it's working. So we'll wait for a little while, see how it all turns out.
When will the administration begin
I
firing
think it'll work
federal...
very quickly. I think it's going to go very quickly. The meetings seem to be very good. We'll find out. We'll let you know soon.
The talks come after Hamas agreed to some parts of the U.S.'s 20-point peace plan, including freeing hostages in exchange for Palestinians held in Israeli jails.
The group's response did not mention the key demands of its disarmament, but Al Arabiya, citing sources, said that the group has agreed to hand over weapons under international supervision.
In a post on social media earlier, Trump said that talks had been very successful and that the first phase should be completed this week. The foreign ministers from several countries, including Egypt, said that the talks at the Egyptian resort town were a real opportunity to achieve a sustainable ceasefire.
A senior Hamas official told AFP on the conditions of anonymity that the Palestinian group is very keen to reach an agreement to end the war and immediately begin the prisoner exchange process in accordance with the field conditions. Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu expressed hope to announce the release of hostages in the coming days.
Now, Netanyahu ordered the departure of the Israeli delegation on Monday for the crucial talks. A Hamas delegation headed by chief negotiator Khalil al-Hayya, one of the targets of an Israeli assassination attempt in Doha last month, arrived in Cairo on Sunday night. U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff, Trump's son-in-law Jared Kushner, and Qatari Foreign Minister Sheikh Mohammed bin Abdulrahman Al Thani will also be attending.
Seal the deal. These were the chants which reverberated in Jerusalem as hundreds continued their protest outside the private residence of Benjamin Netanyahu. They also sent out a strong message to Ron Dermer, who is Israel's chief negotiator.
A remembrance ceremony was held outside the Israeli embassy in Athens to mark the victims of the October 7 Hamas attack, while elsewhere pro-Palestinian protesters rallied in front of the Greek parliament to support an end to the war. Pro-Palestinian protests were also held in parts of Serbia, the UK, among other places.
And this while Israeli strikes continued in Gaza, despite Trump as well as U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio telling the country to immediately stop bombing the Strip. Rubio said, "You can't release hostages in the middle of strikes, so the strikes will have to stop." Israeli government spokesperson told reporters on Sunday that while certain bombings have actually stopped inside Gaza, there's no ceasefire in place at this point in time. And Gaza's civil defense agency said that Israeli attacks killed at least 20 people across the territory on Sunday, 13 of them in Gaza City.
Meanwhile, the first 21 of the 49 Spanish activists who were part of the Gaza Aid Flotilla intercepted earlier this week landed in Madrid airport, where they reported having been mistreated and subjected to humiliating treatment during their detention.
All right, there's more on this, and for that we're now being joined live by Dr. Abner Cohen. He's joining us from Monterey, California. He's the professor of non-proliferation and terrorism studies, Middlesbury Institute, and a West Asia analyst. Dr. Cohen, thanks so much for joining us here on World DNA.
Thank you.
Netanyahu, he gave his condition yesterday, this is shortly before the talks, that unless all the hostages are released, no part of this 20-point peace plan will be enacted. Now, the conditions, do you feel that's going to put any kind of a spanner in the works, or is Hamas pretty much on board to let all of the hostages back?
My impression is that the Hamas is, in principle, on board. I think there are some issues to be negotiated, the details. I think that there are a certain kind of assurances, unpublicized, that were given to the Hamas from the United States through negotiators, Egypt, Turkey, and Qatar, that makes the Hamas to feel comfortable that they can go to these negotiations with a good chance of success.
Anything you can share on those unpublicized assurances, sir? Anything more you can share on that?
Yeah, and again, it's my interpretation, my understanding. It's not knowledge that I understand that was given them a certain kind of guarantee that Israel would not target any of the Hamas leaders who arrived to Egypt or anywhere else, that Israel would agree on major cessations of its operations during the time, certain kind of guarantees about Israeli exercise of power, and also possibly about the release of the Palestinian prisoners in Israel were already agreed, but has not been publicized. That's my impression.
Right, and I will
That's the
also
reason
add-
why both sides feel that the chance for success this time is rather high, not assured, but rather high.
And I would like to want you to elaborate on that point as well, because we are talking about the hostage release, and Netanyahu has said that we're not going to go ahead if the hostages aren't released. But considering that as Rubio had pointed out, the ceasefire, there is no ceasefire. The bombardment is still going on. Do you think there is a possibility that Netanyahu might go for a ceasefire when it comes to hostages?
Yes, I do. The full ceasefire, right now they call it halt of operation or cessation of offensive operation. It's informal phrase in response to the request of US President Trump to stop all offensive operations. And my understanding is most of them have been stopped, maybe not all of them, maybe some stuff was in the middle, but essentially most of them were stopped and were halted. The official ceasefire will be agreed once it will be signed. That is to say, along with the agreement about what prisoners are going to be released from Israeli jails, the dates, how much time it will take. As of now, the request is within 72 hours within the signing of the deal. And the common view in both Tel Aviv, as well as Cairo, and as well as Washington, is that both sides, with a strong pressure of the United States, are committed to do it in a short time. Short time means a few days, and then to sign it. And then I think would be a full formal ceasefire.
And on that, I would also want you to ask you on the Hamas. Now, of course, the hostages were the one sticking point which Hamas had in their hands. Do you think when it comes to disarmament, would Hamas would willingly want to go for disarmament after this hostage swap is completed?
That's a more tricky issue. And that's going to be the negotiation over that would be after. So Israel is essentially getting the cash, and it gives some kind of credit, so to speak, because the negotiation of the terms of what would happen the next phase, that is to say, what would happen in the Gaza Strip, what would be, to what extent would be international force to take care of that, to what extent new Palestinian policemen would be trained, and all that details, including the disarming of the Hamas and the elimination of the Hamas as a military organization. All those details needs to be worked out. I agree with you. It would be very, very difficult to agree, let alone to verify that Hamas will be ready to remove all individual weapons, rifles and the like.
Understood.
I think much of it refers to offensive weapon, that is to say, missiles and mortars and the like. But it would be very difficult to be able to, on the individual levels, to disarm everybody, every member of the Hamas.
Well, there are a lot of difficulties, but the talks have reached this point, and they seem more, there is more ambition behind this, at least at this time, and more possibility of a possible conclusion at the end of this than there has been in the past 2 years at least. Let's see where this goes. Of course, lots needs to be ironed out. That was Dr. Abner Cohen joining us from California. Always a pleasure speaking with you, Doctor.
Thank you.
Well, negotiations to end the war in Gaza are underway in Egypt.
But as warring sides, they sit across the table for these talks. People across the world are hitting the streets to demand an end to the war and the suffering in Gaza. In the Dutch capital, Amsterdam, protesters demanded tougher stance against Israel. The protesters gathered under the banner of Red Line March, and the event was planned weeks ahead of the announcement by US President Donald Trump of his plan to end the war.
The scenes in London were similar. Protesters rallied at Trafalgar Square in central London, holding banners, placards and flags in support of the Palestinians.
Manchester, on the other side, was blue, where supporters of Israel staged protests ahead of the anniversary of the October 7th attack. The gathering comes just days after 2 people were killed in Manchester in an anti-Semitic attack on Yom Kippur.
Now, thousands of pro-Palestinian protesters marched in Spain's Madrid. The streets were covered with Palestinian flags. Protesters said it was unacceptable to have the future of Palestinians determined by a staunchly pro-Israeli global power like the United States.
Anger is mounting in Turkey's capital Ankara as well. Demonstrators came out on the streets against Israel's interception of a flotilla carrying aid to Gaza and to voice their support for Palestine. Protesters waved Turkish and Palestinian flags, and chants of Turkish soldiers to Gaza echoed throughout the event.
Tekrar mikrofonlara kulak vermenizi, bizleri dinlemenizi rica ediyorum. Çünkü karmaşa çıkmasın, kargaşa çıkmasın ve yeknesak.
Anger also poured on the streets of Rome, where 250,000 people took part in a demonstration to support Palestine. On the 4th day of the widespread protest in Italy, it followed the interception of a Gaza-bound activist aid flotilla.
Streets of Paris turned blue, where several thousand people gathered for a march calling for the release of Israeli hostages held by Hamas. People were seen holding placards with pictures of the hostages.
The sentiment in Tel Aviv is no different. Protesters took to the streets urging Israeli PM to seal the deal and end the war in Gaza and bring all the hostages home. Hostage families also set up Tent of Hope in front of Israeli PM's residence in Jerusalem.
After 2 years of struggle, 2 years in which 48 hostages and 1 female hostage are held captive by Hamas, we are a step away from a comprehensive deal and the end of the war. This opportunity must not be missed. We will not let it be missed.
Now, among the rubble and black smoke bellowing from the destroyed buildings, Palestinians are living between hope and fear. Over 67,000 people have died during these past 2 years, but some are keeping the optimism for peace alive even now.
Ending the war, no matter the cost, is in itself salvation from the massacre being carried out against the Palestinian people, from the starvation war imposed by the occupation, and from the repeated waves of displacement.
All right, let's shift focus to the Russia-Ukraine front. In Ukraine's western Lviv region, emergency crews and residents are scrambling to put out fires and clear the rubble.
And this comes after deadly Russian strikes on Sunday killed 5 people, and key energy facilities were severely damaged. Officials say it is the largest attack on the region since the war began.
On Sunday, Ukrainian President Zelensky said that Russia launched around 550 munitions overnight in a massive long-range assault across Ukraine. Strikes were reported in multiple regions, including Lviv, Kharkiv, Odessa, and Zaporizhia.
Zelensky went on to say that Russia is openly targeting Ukraine's civilian infrastructure ahead of winter, aiming to cripple gas power generation and transmission systems.
He criticized what he called a zero real reaction from the world. The strikes knocked out power to over 110,000 people across several regions, with Zaporizhia suffering the worst. Meanwhile, US President Trump supports Russian President Vladimir Putin's offer to stick to nuclear weapons limits. He has called it a good idea. President Putin recently said that Russia is willing to follow the limits set by the 2010 New START treaty.
Now, if the U.S. agrees to do the same, that treaty is set to expire in February. If both sides move forward, it will be a rare sign of cooperation. Relations between the U.S. and Russia have been tense in the recent months.
Specifically following reports of Russian drones entering NATO airspace shortly after Trump and Putin met in Alaska back in August.
Well, let's shift our focus to Korean Peninsula now. North Korea is flexing its military prowess.
And country's leader Kim Jong-un has issued a fresh warning to South Korea. He says no South Korean territory is safe from the North's fury. Kim Jong-un was seen walking among missiles at a defense industry exhibition in Pyongyang. Speaking at the event, Kim Jong-un criticized the US-South Korea military buildup in the region, and to avert this threat, he announced special assets to key targets of interest on the Korean peninsula, expressing North's preparedness to strike South Korean territory in the event of a conflict.
The photos released by North Korea captured a missile warhead labeled Hwasong-11MA. The missile is known as the North Korean version of the Iskander, that is Russia's short-range ballistic missile system. Hwasong-11MA is the upgraded version of older KN-23 missile, estimated to fly at low altitudes at speeds exceeding Mach 5 until impact.
Now, the latest warning from Kim Jong-un comes days ahead of the 80th anniversary of the ruling Workers' Party of Korea. On the 10th of October, Kim Jong-un will lead a large-scale military parade in the capital, Pyongyang.
Well, South Korea, on the other hand, is sounding a nuclear alarm. Seoul claimed that Pyongyang has gathered a large amount of highly enriched weapons-grade uranium, indicating a significant boost in Kim Jong-un's stockpile of nuclear materials.
French President Emmanuel Macron has announced a new cabinet that is going to be led by the new Prime Minister Sébastien Lecornu.
Now, he was appointed a month ago. Bruno Le Maire, who served as Economy Minister from 2017 to 2024, was named Defense Minister at a deeply sensitive time of tension with Russia over Ukraine. While Foreign Minister Jean-Noël Barrot retained his post, Roland Lescure, a Macron loyalist, will take over the economy portfolio. The presidency unveiled a total of 18 names, with more appointments to be announced at a later stage.
Now, these announcements come at a time when President Macron is struggling to pull the country out of a political crisis. Lecornu, who was previously the Defense Minister of France, was promoted as France's fourth Prime Minister within a year after his predecessor was ousted by the deeply divided parliament and turmoil over spending cuts.
Now, Lecornu is set to deliver a crucial speech on Tuesday to the National Assembly, where he will outline his government's direction and plans for next year's budget. This address will likely serve as a key test of his leadership and policy priorities.
Prime Minister Lecornu's minority government faces significant challenges, with its lifespan hanging in the balance due to a lack of stable majority in parliament. Opposition parties on both the left and far right are rallying against him, with the left considering a no-confidence vote and Marine Le Pen's National Rally Party pushing for snap legislative elections.
Amid the ongoing shutdown and National Guard deployment in the U.S., President Donald Trump attended the celebrations commemorating U.S. Navy's 250th anniversary.
Trump was accompanied by First Lady Melania Trump as he landed on the ship stationed in Virginia's Norfolk. Other guests of the event included Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth and Navy Secretary, that's John Fallon.
Now, Trump attended the Titans of the Sea, a salute to the fleet event held in conjunction with the anniversary celebrations at Naval Station. Now, during the event, he and First Lady watched a military demonstration on the deck of an aircraft carrier where Navy destroyers launched missiles and fired shells into the Atlantic Ocean.
Now, while addressing the event, Trump took a swipe at his political opponents and attacked Democratic lawmakers as the shutdown entered its fifth day, causing military personnel to work without pay until the government reopens.
As your commander-in-chief, I will always stand for you. I promise you that. You know that. That's why you voted for me in numbers that nobody's ever seen before. And I want you to know that despite the current Democrat-induced shutdown, we will get our service members every last penny. Don't worry about it.
The Republicans and Democrats are engaged in a blame game as U.S. shutdown began on Wednesday. The shutdown has resulted in several thousand federal employees being furloughed, with many more working without pay. The shutdown stems from a disagreement over federal spending, with Democrats pushing for a permanent extension of enhanced premium tax credits to help Americans purchase private health insurance through the Affordable Care Act.
Hundreds of balloons painted the sky of New Mexico.
The country is celebrating its 53rd International Balloon Fest. Take a look at these colorful visuals. All right, it's now time for a very short break on World Day, but don't go anywhere. Lots lined up on the other side. Rescue efforts are underway on Mount Everest after a snowstorm trapped nearly 1,000 people in campsites on its eastern side. We'll get you all the latest on that.
India continued their dominance over Pakistan in women's cricket as well, with a commanding 88-run win in the ICC ODI World Cup. More details on the other side when we come back. World DNA will continue. Stay with us.
Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh. To some, it's an extreme ideology. To others, it's the very soul of India. To some, it's rebellion. To others, it's a principle of nation building. Coming soon to challenge perceptions in RSS Centenary Year, Kesariya at 100.
From the bustling trading floors of Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asian stock markets, WION breaks it down for you to make sense of what's happening, as we reveal the key factors behind events, strategic battles, and the game-changing business decisions that shape the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch.
Welcome back, viewers. You're watching World DNA with Jyotsna. I'm Shivan. Let's start with the headlines.
President Donald Trump says the U.S. is not going to wait long. Again, if Iran restarts quest to obtain nuclear weapons, says B-2 bomber pilots had been training for 22 years for Operation Midnight Hammer that hit nuclear facilities in Iran.
Donald Trump claims that there are no boats left in the Caribbean near the Venezuelan coast after U.S. strikes on small boats. The White House says the strikes, which have blown up at least 4 boats so far, are stopping drugs from reaching the U.S.
Yeah, very quickly. I think it's going to go very quickly. The meeting seemed to be very good.
U.S. President Donald Trump urges negotiators gathering in Egypt for talks aimed at ending the war in Gaza to move fast, adding that there had been very positive discussions with Hamas and countries from all over the world.
Israel continues its strikes in Gaza, saying there was no ceasefire in place at the moment, only a temporary halt in certain bombings. Gaza health officials say 22 people killed in the territory on Sunday, including 4 aid seekers.
French President Emmanuel Macron appoints new government led by Prime Minister Sébastien Lecornu. Jean-Noël Barrot reappointed as foreign minister.
Rescue efforts are underway on Mount Everest after a snowstorm trapped nearly 1,000 people in campsites on its eastern side. Hundreds of trekkers were guided to safety by rescuers as unusually heavy precipitation, including rain, pummeled the Himalayas.
In India, authorities say situation under control in Odisha's Cuttack city after violent clashes. 36-hour curfew and internet suspension remain in effect. Police conduct patrol march in the sensitive areas.
At least 6 patients have died in a massive fire that broke out in an ICU ward of Jaipur's Savai Mansingh Hospital in the early hours today.
Gold prices surged past $3,900 per ounce, hitting a fresh record high as investors sought safety amid a U.S. federal government shutdown and expectations of further Federal Reserve rate cuts.
McLaren retains the F1 Constructors title, a solid 3rd to 4th place finish by Lando Norris and teammate Oscar Piastri at the Singapore Grand Prix seals their 10th Constructors Championship title in Formula One history.
The rescue efforts are underway in the remote Tibetan slopes of Mount Everest, where a snowstorm has trapped nearly 1,000 people in a campsite on the eastern side of the mountain.
Hundreds of local villagers and rescue teams have been deployed to clear out snow blocking access to the area, which sits at an altitude of more than 4,900 meters.
According to a local media, about 350 people have been rescued and guided to safety so far, while contact with the remaining 200-plus trekkers has been made. Eyewitness footage showed the snowy conditions. In one video, a line of hikers can be seen wading through snow in poor visibility.
Heavy snowfall began on Friday evening and has intensified on the eastern slopes of Mount Everest in Tibet, which is an area popular with climbers and hikers due to its easy access by paved roads. October is a peak season when skies are usually clear at the end of the Indian monsoon. But ticket sales and entry to the entire scenic area were suspended from late Saturday, according to an official notice.
To the south of Tibet in Nepal, heavy rains have triggered landslides and flash floods that have blocked roads, washed away bridges, and killed at least 47 people since Friday.
And in India, the Chief Minister of Assam, Himanta Biswa Sharma, has shared an update in the ongoing investigation into singer Zubeen Garg's death during a yacht trip.
First, the CM has stated that the Viscera examination report is expected by the 10th of October now. Zubeen Garg, one of Assam's most beloved cultural icons, passed away in Singapore on 19 September after an alleged drowning incident. The singer was in Singapore for the Northeast India Festival.
Himanta Biswa Sharma has emphasized that police are meticulously recording all witness statements in the case diary, regardless of their nature, while clarifying that recent media reports on poisoning stem from an accused's claim rather than official police findings.
Sharma acknowledged that the challenges in the ongoing probe, noting that the Assam police could not investigate in Singapore and was dependent on witnesses present during the yacht trip to return and cooperate. He has urged the Assamese community to press for the swift return of key suspects currently in Singapore to avoid further delays in the probe.
The Assam police on Saturday handed over the second post-mortem report of late singer Zubeen Garg to his wife Garima Garg as investigations into his death continue.
According to official documents with the police, the late singer's bandmate Shekhar Jyoti Goswami has alleged that Zubeen was poisoned in Singapore and his manager Siddharth Sharma and festival organizer Shamakanu Mahanta had deliberately chosen a foreign venue to conceal their conspiracy.
Now, both Sharma and Mahanta have been arrested by police as part of their probe into the death of the famous singer. Goswami and co-singer Amrit Prabha Mahanta have also been arrested in this case.
And earlier on Friday, the Assam government announced a judicial commission panel headed by Justice Soumitra Saikia of the Guwahati High Court to investigate the case. The CM said the commission would operate independently while also overseeing the CID's ongoing probe. In India, situation remains under control in Odisha's Cuttack city after the violent clashes.
Well, the city is now under a curfew and internet suspension following fresh violence on Sunday that followed a recent group clash during a Durga immersion procession. That's an idol procession. And police said that the curfew in parts of Cuttack will be effective for 36 hours from 10 p.m. on Sunday, while the internet suspension was on for 24 hours. Odisha police conducted patrol march in the sensitive areas of the state.
The situation in Cuttack is under control. From our side, we are monitoring the situation. All necessary action will be taken against the perpetrators.
On Sunday, violence erupted as clashes broke out between police and the protesters at the Dargah Bazaar area where demonstrators confronted the police. The protesters accused the administration of failing to prevent the earlier clashes despite heavy police deployment in the area. Sunday's clashes followed violence that broke out between two communities during an idol immersion procession in the early hours on October 4th.
Now, according to the police, trouble started after some locals objected to the loud music during the event. Arguments quickly escalated with stones and bottles thrown from rooftops onto the crowd below.
We received information that near the Gauri Shankar Park, rioters have set fire at 8 to 10 places. We have extinguished the fire. The rioters are pelting stones at us. Police have been deployed to control the situation.
At least half a dozen people were injured, including the Cuttack Deputy Commissioner of Police. Police responded with a mild baton charge to disperse the crowd and restore order.
So far, 6 people have been arrested. Police say they are using CCTV footage, drone visuals and eyewitness accounts to identify others involved. In responding to the escalation, State's Chief Minister appealed for peace and vowed strict action will be taken against those found guilty. Additional police forces have been deployed across sensitive areas with prohibitory orders in place to prevent further escalation. RSS Chief Mohan Bhagwat has called for the return of undivided India.
Well, during an event in Madhya Pradesh, Bhagwat said we must take back areas occupied by Pakistan, and his comments attracted applause from the crowd.
बहुत सारे सिंधी भाई यहाँ बैठे हैं। मुझे बड़ा आनंद है, वो पाकिस्तान नहीं गए थे, वो अविभाजित भारत गए थे। ये आदत नई पीढ़ी तक जानी चाहिए, क्योंकि हमारा एक घर है, परिस्थिति ने हमको उस घर से यहाँ भेजा है, क्योंकि वो घर और ये घर अलग नहीं है, पूरा भारतवर्ष एक घर है। परंतु हमारे घर का एक कमरा जिसमें मेरा टेबल कुर्सी कपड़ा वगैरह रहता था, वो किसी ने हथियाया है। कल मुझे उसको वापस लेकर वहां फिर से अपना डेरा डालना है।
The remarks come amid escalating tensions in Pakistan-occupied Kashmir, where thousands have taken to the streets against Pakistani rule. The protests led by the Awami Action Committee turned violent as well. In just 3 days, at least 10 people were killed and more than 100 were injured as Pakistani security forces opened fire on the demonstrators. Analysts say that the Pakistani establishment's reliance on repression over dialogue is fueling the crisis further, deepening the alienation of local residents from Islamabad.
Well, just a day earlier, the RSS chief had spoken about the need to strengthen India's security capabilities. Referring to the recent Pahalgam terror attack, he said that the global response revealed who India's true friends are. Well, gold and cryptos were on a tear even before Donald Trump came to power.
However, both assets have soared over, and they've soared even further under Trump 2.0. The market moves under Trump's second term is filled with joy for risk assets, and at the same time, his policy decisions have driven safe haven gold to new peaks repeatedly.
Well, now a government shutdown in the U.S. is likely to push gold past $4,000 an ounce. That would double the yellow metal's price in less than 2 years. The haven asset has plenty of reasons to be trading at these lofty levels. Gold benefits from lower interest rates that reduce the opportunity cost of holding it and from higher inflation. It also rises when the dollar falls. And the reason? Well, because gold is priced in dollars and it competes with cash. Well, right now, all three factors are working in gold's favor.
On the other hand, cryptos have soared to all-time highs driven by Trump's policies in favor of the industry. Bitcoin hit a fresh peak on Sunday of above $123,500, surpassing August's record. Now, if bets in the options market are anything to go by, the OG token is well set on its path towards $130,000. Then there's upheaval in Washington and trust in the dollar is shaken.
A cycle of rate cuts that kicked off last month and the U.S. administration's attacks on the Federal Reserve have piled pressure on the greenback. Well, all those events have favored the digital assets industry apart from a wider and increasing adoption into mainstream trading trends.
For Wall Street stocks, the momentum of the more than $20 trillion rally is easing off ahead of the crucial earnings season. Threats to the torrid U.S. stock market rally are compounding Corporate America is set to start disclosing results next week and expectations are sky high. Any results short of expectations will likely drive a deep sell-off with no end in sight for the government shutdown. Traders are gearing up for risk-driven volatility. More importantly, investors are flying nearly blind with respect to key economic data as the impasse on funding has delayed reports. And America's government has shut down. Wall Street analysts are having a crisis.
And the release of U.S. job data typically has traders and investors glued to their screens for all the important numbers. However, on Friday, there was no jobs report from the U.S. Labor Department because of the government shutdown. If that weren't enough, investors are getting worried about more surprises in the coming months from tariffs. Take a look at our next report as we dive into what to expect in the coming week.
The U.S. shutdown has stopped all the data that analysts usually pore over. The problem is trying to piece together the economic jigsaw puzzle from the other sources because of a lack of government-produced statistics. So how do markets watchers look ahead to the upcoming week? These really are tricky times for everyone in financial markets. Some have resorted to reading the tea leaves instead. Wall Street analysts dug deep into the ADP employment data. That is the closest thing to the hollowed and non-delayed jobs report, and it was quite bad last week. The data showed private sector jobs were down 32,000 in September, but its correlation with the official data is often questionable. The Fed's beige book will be out in a couple of weeks. The last one was already talking about weaker hiring demand and in some cases, layoffs. In the absence of key data, Fed's beige book is going to take on outsized significance ahead of the October Fed decision. Yet in reality, a cut is fully priced for this month, and the same is virtually true of December's meeting. The much bigger debate is what happens in 2026. The government shutdown is unlikely to materially change that. So long as the shutdown does not last for ages, the workers affected will return to their jobs with backdated pay with minimal lasting economic damage. The jury is out on whether threats of mass firings will come to fruition. Even if a deal is struck in the next few days, it will take time for the people to return to work and get the data release schedule back on track. This week's releases that are vulnerable to delay are the trade balance, jobless claims numbers, and inventory numbers. The FOMC minutes this week will be an interesting watch. We will also get the preliminary October University of Michigan Consumer Sentiment Index. Spending is holding up for now. However, consumer confidence has dropped this year on job market weaknesses. Concerns about squeezed spending power from tariff-induced price hikes has also weighed on sentiment. With 3 million federal government workers not receiving paychecks and many furloughed workers being threatened with permanent layoff, it is hard to imagine any improvement in the sentiment. Business Bureau Report, WION World is One.
It's over to sports. India continued their dominance over Pakistan in women's cricket as well as they beat their arch rivals by 88 runs in the ICC ODI World Cup.
The victory extended the women in blue's head-to-head record to a staggering 12-0 in ODIs and 5-0 in World Cups. India-Pakistan clashes can seldom be without controversy, and there were two in the group stage game in Colombo. The first had nothing to do with the two teams directly. The no handshake policy continued from the Asia Cup, but a goof-up occurred at the toss by the match referee. Pakistan skipper Fatima Sana called tails, but the referee mistakenly heard heads and the call went in Pakistan's favor. However, it didn't matter in the end because India put up a score that was a hill too tall to climb for Pakistan.
There was also another bizarre moment 20 overs into India's innings as the match had to be stopped for roughly 10 minutes for fumigation. Now, there weren't any standout performances by any batters per se, but 8 of them scored in double digits with Harleen Deol top scoring with her 65 ball 46 and on a pitch where every other Indian batter found it difficult to score. Richa Ghosh, coming in at number 8, smashed an unbeaten 35 off 20 balls to lift India to 247, the highest total without a 50-plus stand in women's ODIs.
The second controversy occurred in the 4th over of Pakistan's innings when Muniba Ali was ruled run out. At first, she was given not out, but the third umpire overturned the decision after a recheck.
According to the laws of the game, a batter is considered out unless a part of the bat or the body is grounded behind the popping crease. But clause 30.1.2 clarifies that a batter isn't considered out if they were running or diving and had previously grounded their bat or body, even if contact is momentarily lost. However, since Muniba was neither running nor diving and her bat had left the ground at the moment of impact, the decision stood run out.
Now, Pakistan's innings never really took off after that. The women in green were 3 down for just 26 runs in the 12th over and only crossed the 100-run mark in the 30th over. Fatima Sana's side couldn't capitalize on India's sloppy fielding as they were restricted to just 159 in 43 overs. Kranti Good was India's pick of the bowlers with figures of 3 for 20. Deepti Sharma also took 3 wickets as Pakistan slumped to back-to-back defeats, having lost their opener against Bangladesh by 7 wickets last week. And it's now time to look at the box office performances of the Hollywood movies in theaters. The box office witnessed a surprising shakeup this weekend as Taylor Swift's The Official Release Party of a Showgirl dominated the North American charts, proving the pop superstar's unparalleled box office power. The concert film and album companion piece, announced with minimal promotion just 2 weeks ago, took the #1 spot with an impressive $33 million debut. The success of The Official Release Party of a Showgirl is a testament to Swift's devoted fan base known as Swifties, who turned out in droves to support the special cinematic event. The film, released through AMC Theaters, features music videos, behind-the-scenes footage, and lyric visuals from her 12th studio album, The Life of a Showgirl. Globally, the film has already earned $46 million.
And trailing behind Swift's film in a crowded field was Paul Thomas Anderson's acclaimed drama One Battle After Another, which held its ground at second spot. The film, starring Leonardo DiCaprio, earned an additional $11.1 million, bringing its domestic total to $42.8 billion. And its global came to over $100 million. Meanwhile, Dwayne Johnson's bid for awards season glory with The Smashing Machine had a more modest opening. The A24 drama, which co-stars Emily Blunt and chronicles the life of MMA legend Mark Kerr, debuted at number 3 with 6 million. Despite strong reviews and a 15-minute standing ovation at the Venice Film Festival, the opening marked one of the lowest for Dwayne Johnson in a leading role.
Well, that's all on World Day today. But before we wrap up this bulletin, here's a look at all the climate stories making headlines across the world. We'll be right back with more news and updates on the other side. Keep watching Beyond What Is.
India's global voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide. Because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION. World is one. From the bustling trading floors of Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asian stock markets, WION breaks it down for you to make sense of what's happening. As we reveal the key factors behind events, strategic battles, and the game-changing business decisions that shape the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch.
The Earth is sending distress signals. Wildfires, droughts, and melting glaciers. Can we reverse the damage? Explore the harrowing effects of climate change. It's a wake-up call. Global emergency. Climate Tracker on WION World is One.
WION, India's global voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries